Yeah, so earlier we were talking about, Final Fantasy 15 having a day one patch they want to make available for offline. Dom, you actually want to talk about day one patches in general?
Yeah, so there was, in addition to Final Fantasy 15, there was a big kerfuffle about No Man's Sky's day one patch. Had a couple conversations with some different people. I mean, which version of the game should you review and things like that. And a lot of people are of the mind, well, everyone has internet. Like, I don't really care or mind that a game is shipping a little bit broken because it's going to get fixed the day after. But we often overlook the mysterious percentage of gamers who don't have internet and can't get these patches. So is it okay to ship a game that isn't, frankly, playable or completed, to a bunch of people, even if only 5% of all of us, all gamers, don't have internet? That's still probably a couple million people, right? So I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts are on, because it's becoming prominent. Every game seems to have a huge day one patch. I can't remember a game that I've bought on release date that didn't. I mean, I'd have to go back a year or two probably at least. So I'm kind of split on it. I'm on the middle of the fence. I'm going to take that pussy route, but I just, they're really, like, if it's only 5% of gamers that don't have their boxes connected to the internet, then it's hard to justify, moving your release date to cater to 5% of your audience. And let's also remember that these publishers and studios do know those percentages, right? Because they obviously can see who connects to their services.
On top of that, the people who have online are the ones who are more than likely going to buy your DLC if your game has that. The people that are offline can't really. Yeah. They don't have online, period. So, that's more revenue. So, it's like, are you going to take time to make sure the 5% that don't have internet, or are you going to worry about the other 95 that also will possibly buy your DLC, giving you more revenue? So,
and I keep on saying 5%.
It's a number we just threw out. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm kind of middle of the road. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but certainly in a couple of years from now, it's just gonna happen. And
yeah.
Because more and more people are getting internet every day, right? So it's an interesting thing. A lot of people get upset when it's 6 gigabyte day one patch comes out. You're like, well, what the heck were you doing in the last 2 years making the game? And I don't want to say like that devs are lazy, of course, but I don't know. I'm still middle of the road. So what do you guys think?
So I have a couple of things to say about this. So the first part of it, the first chunk, is I think there's two different types of day one patches. There's the day one patches that essentially make the experience of the game that went gold better, right? So when that day one patch comes out, it's basically fine-tuning everything. There's also the day one patches that fix a broken game that they sent out when it was gold. Those are two different things. I don't mind day one patches if they're improving a game that's already complete and would work on its own. But I also understand the concern, and this is the second part of it, of like, it's either you delay your game, get people mad, or you do a day one patch, right? And maybe it's not always that case. But if you think about it, you can maybe delay your game, work on the game, and then have it come out and you don't really have a substantial day one patch. Or you cannot not touch the day one the day one stuff, or not delay it, and then you can work on a day one patch that basically does the same thing that you would have done in the same time frame. To me, it's all about messaging, and it's all about how broken the game is at release without the day one patch. Going to an all-digital future, this is a reality you're going to have to live with. And, this goes back to the whole argument of, like, digital versus physical and, like, internet infrastructure, and there's a lot more deeper conversations to have here than just day one patches. But as far as just day one patches by themselves, I think all games are better for it. And if you can't deal with being online and downloading a day one patch for a game, then maybe you should just go buy a Nintendo console and play those games without any third-party support where they don't have day one patches.
Oh, shit!
So I mean,
damn, burn.
So you're right to bring out that there's different scenarios here. There's different kinds of day one patches. For example, when Bloodborne came out, the loading times were egregious, whatever the hell that word is. Right? Every time you died, you'd have to sit at a loading screen for 2 minutes. Like a few weeks later, they patched it, and now it took like 30 seconds. That's not changing much. It's making the game better, certainly, but it's not. The game wasn't broken before, and by any means. And then there's games like, and I played it on PC, so I didn't experience this, but I anecdotally heard that when The Witcher 3 came out on consoles, initially the controls were a little janky, and there were some frame rate issues kind of consistently that they proceeded to patch and fix up. within a few weeks. So that to me is a little bit different, because when your controls are a little off or your frame rate is dipping below 30 on numerous occasions, then that's like maybe you needed another minute, and you proved that you just needed another minute because you could fix it, because you did.
Yeah.
But just two types of those examples that come to mind.
Yeah, I think just Witcher 3 specifically, I don't remember any issues I have with the controls, but they definitely did have to work on the frame rate.
Okay.
But, at the same time, there's something to be said for the size of that game, and, like, the fact that, like, Fallout 4, even the latest DLC has, like, frame rate issues, and, with Witcher 3's DLC, they totally revamped it and made it better. I think I kind of, not a total free pass for CD Projekt Red there, but I think, like, it dipping below 30 frames is okay. As far as other games, Bloodborne, I don't think I even would have been able to play if I hadn't waited almost a year after it came out to start, just because, I couldn't, with all the times I die in that game, I couldn't handle those loading screens. And then, as far as games getting, like, delay versus a day one patch, even the games that get delayed, you're talking about this day one patch for No Man's Sky, it got delayed from earlier in June. So even games that get delayed still have a day one patch, and even if you weren't going to have a day one patch after a delay, you're going to have a patch somewhere down the road. So I think that that's just the world we live in. If you're playing games completely offline, somewhere in the, maybe middle of nowhere or whatever at this point, I think you get that. I think you understand, like, I just have a shitty internet connection, or I don't have internet at all. It sucks, but this is how my games are. They may be broken or whatever, but, you're also missing out on a lot of other shit in the world that, in society, that is part of 2016, being on the internet and all that stuff. So that's, you're kind of like, it's not really apples to oranges, but it's definitely like a weird comparison there, because you're missing out on a bunch of other stuff, even more important shit than, video game patches. So
the other part of the discussion was whether or not reviews should wait a week or 2 weeks, to include these patches, and should they review the game without the patch, or that sort of thing. And I think that answer is a little easier, is that you review what the vast majority of gamers are going to experience when they play the game, right?
Exactly.
Which
so
is with the patches.
Yeah, so if there's a substantial day one patch, you review after that patch.
Exactly.
Your review won't be especially in the case of like No Man's Sky, where the game's so drastically different. Your review's irrelevant to people because the copy you're playing is completely different than the copy they're playing. Yeah. And I also think it's up to the developer too. Like, if the developer states like, "Hey, our game is, the day one patches change some of this stuff, but you're still good to go. It's not much different than the game that you're going to be getting for review." I think it's all about the open communication with the reviewers. I do, though, appreciate the review in progresses more than just outright review.
Yeah, I love those. Just
because you kind of see the path that they took of, like, here's what the game was like before, here's what the game was like after, here's what the game was like next. And yeah, I think, to do a credit to the developers who spend time on these things too, I think as a reviewer, you owe it to the people who take your word as gold to, like you said, review the game that they're going to be playing. Don't review the game you're going to be playing that you get 2 weeks early. So, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Don't cater to the lowest common denominator. That's a really mean way to say you don't have internet.
Well, it's true. We live in and obviously we live in places where we're fortunate enough to have internet, and it sucks that some places don't. But if you care that much about gaming, where it's such a huge detriment to your life, you might want to think about moving somewhere where they have decent internet. It sucks that you have to put it that way, but
the other part is, if you're watching a review on IGN, for example, you're watching it on the internet. Yeah. Unless there's another way to watch it I don't know about. So exactly. That's another part of that equation. It's so weird to think about people that don't have internet right now. To me, that just seems, that's like so foreign and crazy. It's not like, well, get a Blu-ray player, you're behind, so you could just go to the store and grab one. Yeah. You're literally asking someone to move to a different area because they can't help the internet that's available in their area.
It's like saying, man, it sucks that Green Room is only available on Blu-ray and 4K Blu-ray. It's not available on VHS because all I have is a VHS player.
Right.
It's like, well, you got to get with the times, and if you're, if they don't sell DVDs in your area, move somewhere where they sell them. Like, It sucks to put it that way, but we're in such a time that, like, they're a business. These are businesses. They cater to the majority, not the minority.
Right.
Sucks to hear that, but that's the case. So. Just how it is, I guess. I have nothing else to say about day one patches. I think it's a very complicated issue, and I think it's up to the developer to have an open dialogue with reviewers and with gamers, and be upfront with it, and take a hold of having that day one patch and be proud of it in some instances. Be like, you know what, we weren't satisfied with the game we were shipping. We could easily shipped it as it was, but we worked our asses off after we got this game gold to have a day one patch to make this experience the best possible experience we could for you guys. So.
Plus, most games that, even discs that I put into my console for the first time, they got to, download a little bit first before I can play it anyway.
Exactly.
So
they
what's
have an update as well.
Right.
Yeah,
and you can start, at least on PS4, you can start playing while the download is in progress, but you got to let it at least get so far. I think that's how it works.
Yeah, and also only part of the game is usually available depending on how much is downloaded.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, I have nothing else to say. What about you, Jordan? Any closing thoughts on day one patches?
No, I think we covered it. I think the biggest thing is how do you review it? How do you talk about it in a review? Do you include the day one patch or not? But yeah, I think we hit that.
Domini, anything?
Check the patch notes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a new short form news show I'm going to be starting up in the next couple of weeks. Might be this week. Not sure, but definitely go to our YouTube channel and check that out.